Great. Well, thank you all for coming on Mother's Day, I know, and also the first evening church ever, right? Usually this church happens in the morning on a Sunday. So I really appreciate everyone making the time switch for my time zone. If it's possible to turn on your video, I would really appreciate that. So I feel like I'm not talking to a bunch of screens, especially since we're such a tiny group. But yeah, if you feel like you have bad hair or something, or you're just not in the mood to be looked at, I get it. And also I believe we're recording, so maybe you don't want to be on the screen for that reason. But yeah, if it's possible, I would love to see your faces, even if just for a moment. Okay, so today I'm going to give a sort of brief artist talk. We're here for about an hour, is that right, Monika?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So yeah, I'm going to actually give a fairly brief artist talk because I wanted to kind of open up the space and see if we could do a little social experiment and create a little bit of felt sense of community and kinship here, especially since we're such a tiny group. And so, yeah, maybe if you have a pen and paper handy, we might do a little bit of writing as well later on. We'll see how we go, depending on who shows up. But the title of this talk today is called Art Beyond Commodity, Art as a Process of Care. And I called it this because these are sort of two creative currents that I really feel underpin a lot of my work. And in a way, they sort of have a tension with each other. I'd really treat them like practices, and practices that both support one another and depend on one another. So this idea of art beyond commodity is, I mean, I guess it has a tension with the other one because it's sort of more of an outward form and it sort of has a rebellious energy to it. It's about disrupting and questioning the dominant paradigm and trying to envision something different and new. Whereas art as a process of care is much more of like an inward turning, nurturing, gardening, cultivating, creative energy. And so the way I sort of see them both working together is the rebellious energy is sort of like pointing in the direction and creating movement or momentum forward. And then the process of care is more a receptive quality, more a felt sense of what's happening, more attending to the present moment and the relationships involved, and seeing what emerges from that place. So the two really need each other. And as an example of this, I wanted to share the project that I have been doing for the last 5 years, which is called Inner Fields. And Paul over here is one of our collective members, so I'm so happy to have a little ally in the space. But Inner Fields was a project I started in 2015, and it was just a community building project that I started out of my apartment. It was a art project that is really explores ecological consciousness and ecological healing, or sometimes what I call radical ecology, which is the ways humans can basically understand our ecological place and uplift our role within that. And it really borrows a lot from Buddhist and Taoist philosophy, which is the lineage that I come from. But currently, Inner Fields is now a collectivized organization of 8 different artists, writers, scholars, and educators. And they come from a variety of cultural and spiritual traditions. So what we're really drawing on is the wisdom of all of those traditions and the places where they meet. And I would say kind of the inherent principle or the sort of foundation of that philosophy is really this one of a wisdom of change and a wisdom of impermanence, and exploring that through different curated events, study and practice groups, artistic gatherings. We kind of take many forms. So there's a very shape-shifting nature to Inner Fields, and it's very like reiterative or reflexive, and it changes according to the social landscape and the communities we want to serve and the needs of those communities. So that's sort of our outward expression, and at the same time, we also have an inward expression. And so our organizational structure and our organizational model is also a creative practice for us. So the foundation of our organizational structure is this idea of gift ecology or gift economics, a culture of generosity. And this philosophy expresses our practices around impermanence and letting go and our philosophy of change, but it's also the creative expression of our rebelliousness and the ways that we uphold an anti-capitalist mindset, basically. So the idea is that generosity works on an entirely different logic than the commodity culture. It disrupts commodity culture, which is really very much based on a sense of separation and individuation, a sense of scarcity, and it breaks down the barriers between self and other, and really acknowledges that like any benefits that you get don't necessarily take away from the benefits that I get. So it operates on really different principles rather than the principles of like competition and hoarding and accumulating and defending. So when I started Inner Fields, I was kind of in a place of like disillusionment with sort of what my role was as an artist at the time. I was following a fairly conventional artist path, I guess you would say. Like I was, you know, applying for grants and exhibitions and showing my work, and but the sort of sense of impending doom that I felt around climate collapse and just social injustice and widening inequities, and I really wanted to find my own voice and my own way of being of service to that as an artist. And I think there are many artists that are doing that, but I needed to find my own voice and my own sense of integrity of how I wanted to do that. So when I started Inner Fields, I really just wanted to make a space, and I wanted to make something that couldn't be bought and that couldn't be kept and that couldn't be sold, that really couldn't be commodified in any way. So the shape-shifting aspect of it is good in that way. It's sort of hard to have a fixed identity and it's hard to brand. And also none of our events were photographed or documented pretty much for the last 5 years. Something that I feel now I was a little bit of a purist about, but I really wanted it to be like an experience that, you know, even experiences can be consumed. So I wanted to create a project where people had to come together, and in the coming together, we created the project together. And then when everyone put on their shoes and left the space, the project would dissolve again. And it kind of worked in this way. So, sorry, I wasn't sure if I heard someone say something. And then the other wing of that, again, is the processes of care or the methodology of care that we approach organizationally. So, you know, we take care of each other. There's 8 of us. And basically the success of Inner Fields or the health of Inner Fields is really measured by the depth of relationships created by the community. So we're not validated by external organizations or external forces. We're not validated by a reputation economy. I'm really always asking the questions of like, do people feel they belong in this space? Do people feel welcome? Do people feel like this space speaks their language? Do they feel inspired to collaborate and participate? Am I accessible to them? Do they feel like they could approach me? And yeah, that's really sort of how we take care of the project. And this idea that like by taking care of the relationships in the project, we therefore take care of the project. So it's like a circular space. So in Buddhism, the term we use is spiritual friendship or sangha, which is a community of noble practitioners. And nobility for us is really that we see the best in each other. So again, it's another practice of generosity. We we see the inherent goodness in each other, and we do our best to support and uplift that. It's definitely not all rainbows and sunshine when you're working closely with other people. You know, despite our aspirations, we can trigger each other and activate each other. We have differences of opinion. There can be a lot of friction, particularly right now as we decentralize away from me and become a more participatory form of leadership. You know, there's a lot of friction and tension related to that sometimes as we kind of enter into this new space. So yeah, this premise of like really seeing each other generously and like seeing the best in each other is really important to maintain that sense of commitment to something bigger than ourselves, despite our differences. And to me, that's really the essence of community, this commitment to working together in service of something larger than ourselves. So I just want to talk a little bit about how our gift ecology works, both internally and externally. So externally, basically all our offerings, our public programs are offered freely. And by freely, it's not like, oh, these are just free, you can just show up. It's the gift, the spirit of the gift that we're offering our programs is really one where we're inviting people into a different system, a system of generosity and solidarity. So this is a very non-transactional logic that we're inviting people into. And it's this idea that generosity and gratitude are states of being that can't be forced, that they naturally arise on their own. And yeah, so what are the conditions that we need to create in order to create this culture of basically trust and gratitude and generosity that isn't dependent on force or like manipulation of people? This is obviously hard because everything in the capitalist matrix trains us to not trust, to feel manipulated, to, you know, even the word community in this culture now is very much used to describe like consumer identities rather than, I feel like many people don't even really know what a genuine community can feel like. So yeah, we work just on the premise that if we can create enough conditions for trust, and this idea that when people feel like they've had kindness expressed to them and they've had trust imbued with them, that sense of gratitude naturally arises. And when we have a sense of gratitude in us, the natural impulse is to want to give back or give forward. So at Innerfields, we welcome people to offer gifts to us, and we're entirely run on people's material gifts. But at the same time, we also encourage people to give forward, to give to other organizations, to give in other ways that maybe are non-material, that are in service of the healing and protection of the planet. And anything that basically abides by this logic of generosity is the practice of Innerfields, even if it's not coming back to us in a linear fashion. So we really see this as an ecological practice because it takes this concept of interbeing or interdependence out of the realm of the abstract philosophy and into like a lived, felt experience. So sort of the two questions that we ask whenever we're about to create an event or a public program are, what are our gifts and what are we giving towards? And I feel like these are two kind of essential questions for all artists. As artists, you know, we're in the profession of sharing. We make things to share and connect with others and to communicate a message. And I think it's sort of like a way of clarifying to ourselves what our intentions are when we're creating something that to offer to the world. So again, rather than just making more stuff in the world for people to consume, it's like, what are these gifts giving towards? What are we in service towards? Sometimes we're in service towards ourselves, like we want to appear a certain way, or we want to build up our reputation, or whatever those things are. And they're not necessarily bad things, but just to be aware that that's what we're doing. And and just, know that that is also something that maybe is of benefit to you. So it's not a place of judgment, but just a place of awareness. So for us, this practice of gift ecology really invites us into a deeper mindset of impermanence and change, and this practice of letting go of control. We don't know where all our gifts end up, and we really trust that they have their own path and that they're a living, dynamic expression. We also trust our own creative resourcefulness as our key source of abundance. So, sometimes we don't have very much money. In fact, oftentimes we don't have very much money, but we are, as creative beings, we can work with what we have and still make something beautiful. And we also trust our container of care. So these are all the things that create the conditions for this trust and belonging and the essence of the community to form. And if our community is protected, we're basically protected. So I could keep talking at you for the rest of the hour, but I thought I might offer something, a little bit of like inquiry and open up for discussion, and maybe offer a few writing prompts and see if we can create a little bit of sense of that kinship and community and trust here. It's a bit of a social experiment because we only have like half an hour left together. And also, I'm guessing most of us are largely strangers. This is my first time speaking in this context at Open Source. So it's also a social experiment, always in, again, the capitalist matrix, because we're not taught to be trusting and open. So I just ask you to humor me and stay open and see if we can participate in this. Does that sound okay to everybody if we kind of roll with this? Okay. So if you have a pen and paper handy, maybe we can begin by I have a few questions that I thought I would offer as some writing prompts. And these questions are really oriented around an inquiry into belonging, starting with sort of place and positionality and how we see ourselves where we are, and then moving into sort of lineage and histories that we feel we belong to, or wisdom traditions, and then moving into like, practices of generosity and what we feel our expression of gifts are. So the first question is, what is my relationship to the land and community where I live? And I'll add them into the chat. If you just want to jot a few notes, we can talk about them later. So what is my relationship to the land and community where I live?
I don't know. So we should already like do some writing, right?
Yeah, if you just want to jot down some notes in response to that, and then we'll break out into groups to discuss them. Okay, so the second question is, who are my elders, wise teachers, or mentors? Or what lineage or histories do I feel I belong to? Who are my elders, wise teachers, or mentors? Or what lineage or histories do I feel I belong to? And then the third question is, what are the most beautiful expression of my gifts right now? And what are my gifts in service towards? What are the most beautiful expression of my gifts right now? And what are my gifts in service towards? So, Monika, were you able to figure out the breakout room function, or we don't have that?
I definitely did do something. I did go into the settings of the Zoom and undid what I guess had restricted, but it doesn't show up now.
That's okay.
You know, I don't know exactly. I think I would have to maybe restart or something.
Did you get a nap at all?
I think it's okay. We'll just.
I know, because I was definitely like looking around and trying to figure it out, but unfortunately.
That's okay, no worries. Okay, so maybe what I'll do then is offer a little bit of, a big part of inner fields is meditation and like a somatic orientation. And it's sort of a way to co-regulate all of the people in the room, to sort of bring us all on the same level and to create a sense of openness. Perhaps I'll just offer a little bit of somatic grounding and orientation right now. It's a little bit awkward because we're sort of a small group, but we can't see most of us. So it'll be a little bit hard to co-regulate together. Again, if you just joined us and if it's possible to turn on your video, I would really appreciate it. We're doing a little social experiment here in creating a felt sense of community and a felt sense of kinship. But you don't have to. So does that sound okay if we, okay, great. So maybe just close your eyes for a second and just relax into your seat, feeling the weight of your body resting in your seat, feeling the natural gravity of your body, noticing where your feet are resting on the ground or on the chair, wherever they're positioned. Really feeling the weight and support of your feet, wherever they're resting. Feeling the weight and support of your hands, wherever they're resting. Letting your shoulders be relaxed. Letting the skin on your face be relaxed. Noticing any sensations in your belly and in your chest. And if there's any tightness or constriction, just doing your best to soften them. And let the air just come in and out. And then just taking 3 to 5 long, deep breaths, allowing each breath to be deeper and longer than the one before it. And allowing each one be a little bit slower and a little bit longer than the one before it. As you breathe in, noticing your body be energized and nourished by oxygen. And as you breathe out, feel the tension letting go, the sense of release. Breathing in, nourishing, energizing. Breathing out, relaxing, letting go. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Just notice how your body feels now that your eyes are opened and you're staring at the screen, at the faces on the screen. Just taking a look around the Zoom room. And recognizing in each other like-minded beings, like-minded allies. And I just wanted to now open it up for discussion. If you wanted to share what you wrote or anything that felt poignant about any reflections that came up. You can add it to the chat if you feel better, but it would be nice to hear people's voices.
Oh, we're on. I'll start if nobody wants to. I'm not shy. Well, I guess you asked about elders and wise teachers or mentors in my life. And
sorry, if you could just say your name and where you're calling from to. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lily. I'm sitting here with Monika in her little 3D space, 2D space. So yeah, I liked that question because I've been accused of not respecting my elders in the past because in my line of work, it's a very male dominated thing. So my way of dealing with it was to kind of reject those people who cast me out or cast me down, and I would only embrace those who lifted me up. And I used to feel guilty about it, but now I think I did the right thing because I have a great community of people around me that help me as a musician.
So who would you say are your elders and wise teachers or mentors? Like, are there people in particular or?
Oh yeah, sure. Lots of people. There's my piano teacher who kind of saved me during COVID. She was amazing. And so we learned a lot together. I kind of, you know, she's younger than me, so she's wise and not elder.
I love that. Thank you.
I could say something to the community. That's always something that I'm obviously very involved. You know, I'm thinking about that word a lot, all the time, what that really means. And I think it's it's really something you have to. Community is not always only the people you like, but it's the people that you are surrounded with. And I think that is something that we have to acknowledge more when we talk about a community, that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to understand each other and live with each other. And I feel like that's an important yeah, thing to think about when we talk about community.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Mm. And there, obviously, we also have to talk about history. I mean, it's good to that it's in combination with land, I guess, right?
And I feel like in the city, there's not much connection to the land, just to the people. I don't know.
Mhm.
Well, but no, but I mean, if you think about it differently, I actually feel like that's what we have to understand more, that also the city is, you know, is right, is land.
I guess it's just covered up by asphalt.
It's definitely land.
And
Yeah.
it also used to be different.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people's detachment from the land living in the cities is part of that sense of separation and lack of belonging that people have because they don't feel located. We feel like we're living in these artificial kind of environments, but there is land, there's sky and land and water that are all natural around us all the time, and our bodies.
Right. I mean, that's something that I feel like, you know, just growing a little bit of vegetables now, while, you know, it's definitely something that connects.
Yeah.
But also makes you understand more what you know, what's possible and what was there before, no?
Mhm.
Maybe.
Did you want to say something? Sorry, I don't know your name. EB.
Oh, I did take, yeah, I'll pick up the thread there. So it's Erin. I guess it shows up as my initials, Erin Baker. So it's, I'm loving hearing, it must be the birds, Elaine, in the background where you are. I love hearing the birds. And I'm in the desert Southwest of the United States, and the light right now is really beautiful, and I'm really torn to like run outside and take photos of the light. So I would say that's my entry to your, you know, what is the relationship to land? And I grew up in the desert Southwest, and this aspect of land and sky and geological time that is so aware, you're so aware of it. I mean, I'm in the inland sea, the old inland sea now. And there's just an aspect of land that for many could be overwhelming or boring. And for me, it's everything. But that's after spending many years in Chicago and New York and then overseas. And I think there's some interesting conversation we could have about what is the relationship to land in a cityscape versus what we identify as a more natural landscape. And thinking about community too, I just moved to a very small arts community in the desert. And I'm a business owner here, so I serve a very direct need to our local community. And, you know, being in a small town, you have to step carefully and quietly and understand the dynamics. So I'm really living that right now. So I love your question about what is the relationship to land and community, because I feel it's in my very felt presence at the moment.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Amira, and I'm a part of Innerfields, and I am in Bushwick in Brooklyn. And when I was writing, I wrote about land, since that's what we're talking about. I wrote my backyard. We're making a garden for the second year in a row, which is like such a gift in the city. But I was also going to say how hard it is, and how weedy it is, and how like dirty it gets, and like there's like cat poop everywhere that we're like finding from the strays. So I was thinking, and then I was like, also there's the tree out front that I love, but I also, it's like a battle to keep it clean. There's always litter around it. But then with this question of like, is the city or how is it land or how is it natural, connected to the natural. My partner and I just went to Kissena Park today, which is this beautiful park in Queens that is full of different exotic tree species from all over the world that have been like brought here very deliberately since the 1800s. It used to be like a nursery for the park system. And I was also having a conversation yesterday with a friend about a film she was watching about the trees in the country of Georgia, these huge old trees being like replaced by millionaires, like moved. I don't know, it's a documentary I'd like to see. And then I was also just reading about figs and like the cultivation of figs all over the world and like fig connoisseurship. And so this idea of transplantation and like the way different species have moved to different places and is on my mind, and how we cultivate and how we move as well, and all those kinds of things. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Amira. Yeah, it's interesting thinking about like the immigration of trees, like the land as immigrants too now.
I love that.
Would anyone that hasn't spoken yet like to chime in or write something in the chat if you don't feel like using your voice? Oh yeah, thanks, Erin. There is a really lovely novel at the center of which is Trees, the Overstory, if anyone is of interest. And also, I think there's a book called Finding the Mother Tree, which is probably good for today, right? Mother's Day, which is supposed to be, yeah, I think it's just been released.
Yeah, that's actually.
Hey everyone, I'm Paul. So as mentioned before, I'm also with Interfields, and I just wanted to say that I love this question of what are the most beautiful expression of my gifts right now, and what are my gifts in service towards. And I wish I had more time to sit with that. Like, I feel like I could like contemplate that every morning when I wake up, you know? So thank you for that, because I definitely want to spend some more time with these questions.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I like that question too. And it's like a good little compass. Yeah, for just figuring out what your intentions are and what you're trying to do in the world.
Elaine?
Yeah.
How did you come to these questions? I like just thinking about Paul's comment and just the combination of them. They seem really, I don't know, they encompass a lot, but they're very specific at the same time in their own ways. So I'm just curious.
Thank you, Amira. I actually labored a really long time over what questions to ask, so I really appreciate that. Because, yeah, I mean, I wanted to just have 3 simple questions that sort of reflected different aspects of what I feel create a sense of belonging, ecological belonging. And so, you know, obviously, like being located somewhere and knowing what your relationship to your environment is, even if it is the city, and also the communities where we live. Like, a lot of us don't know our neighbors, and I mean, that's pretty common experience, or people are living in communities that maybe don't feel like theirs. And so what is that relationship like? And not to say that you have to like go make friends with your neighbors, but to just know that there isn't that sense of community there. I think tuning into what we're lacking is also a piece of wisdom, and you know, something that we can then move towards and either repair or just recognize how that affects us. So yeah, the first one I really wanted to just think about like place and positionality and orientation. And then lineage and histories is something that we talk a lot about at Inner Fields. So placing our knowledge systems and our philosophies and beliefs within a larger history that, you know, again, in capitalism, we're taught like, these are my ideas, my philosophy. It's like, actually, these are ancient wisdom traditions and philosophies and or practices and skill sets that have been passed down for thousands of years, you know, whether it be piano or painting or whatever your thing is, you know, it's like all of these things have come to us as gifts. So again, it's sort of a question that like ties us into this, like, are our creative gifts our own, or were they bestowed upon us? Do we deserve them, or are we just gifted them for no apparent reason whatsoever? So again, that's sort of tying us into that philosophy of like, we're constantly receiving gifts all of the time, much more than we could ever return. And then the last question really came from, so I've been doing a course on gift economics for the past year with Charles Eisenstein, who some of you might know. He's a known philosopher that's been a really big influence on me, particularly as I do this course. And just like learn about ways of practicing gift economics within a capitalist structure. So how to like engage more closely with the money system and be more intimate with it and be more honest with it, but from an empowered place where I'm changing my relationship to it. So yeah, Charles Eisenstein often says we're not like above the money matrix. We're actually, you know, we acknowledge that there's real social injustice and trauma that pervades the money economy, and how do we not separate ourselves from that and look down on people that are participate in the money matrix, but actually get closer to it and explore the ways our own traumas and sense of scarcity and sense of fear and distrust, where those are limitations for us. And so yeah, this idea of what are the most beautiful expression of my gifts right now. Again, it's like this idea that we have so much to give. Like it's more than just financial resources. You know, we kind of look down on it, but like the giving of presence and time and energy, like even the creation of this space. Like Monika, how long have you been doing this space for? Like 10 years or something? Yeah. Yeah, so that dedication of time, like every week to host a community space that is just like a space of sharing ideas and uplifting different voices and other artists. Monika's also an artist, so it's not like, even though it's her church, she's not like, this is all about me and my space. And, you know, and actually they used to meet in person, and she offers food, and, you know, so it's like all of these layers of gifts. But the gift of time we can offer each other, you know, and so it's sort of like about opening up what we feel is our sense of innate abundance, for want of a better word. I'm like cautious around using these words because they can sound a little new agey and like we're manifesting wealth and stuff, but it's not really about that. It's really about aligning ourselves with these principles of nature. That nature is like inherently abundant. You know, this idea that like the birds don't just try and sing beautifully to procreate, and they just enjoy singing, and they enjoy flying, and they enjoy playing and having baths. And it's this idea that like pleasure and joy is abundant, and the earth actually gives us everything that we need. So yeah, and so that's basically where those questions came from. Leslie has just written something. So thinking about our relationship to land stewardship and how it might be more disconnected in the city, we might not feel as responsible to care for the natural world around us. In rural natural land, we might feel closer to the land and more part of the land. Also in acknowledging the indigenous people who so deeply care for the land outside the idea of ownership, but instead being in community with the land. Cities might not carry the presence of the indigenous people of the land as clearly, but that doesn't mean they aren't here. Yeah, thanks so much, Leslie. Absolutely. I think it's becoming more common now in a lot of these sorts of spaces where people acknowledge the indigenous people of the lands that they're calling in from. Also, related to what Elaine just said, I saw a quote that said, humans make art and sing in the way that birds sing and make nests. It is natural. That's right. Thank you. It's beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you all so much. Does anyone have any last words or thoughts or reflections on how this process went? Or maybe we can all just write like 1 or 2 words in the chat about how we're feeling, and yeah, and then we can wrap it up. Does that sound good? So yeah, maybe just feeling back into your body again, feeling located where you are, noticing the sense of connection that we shared together, a group of mostly strangers. And just write a couple of words of how that feels in your body or what you're leaving this space with. So we have connected in the serendipity, feeling uplifted and inspired. I feel somehow both grounded and light. I like the idea of gifting more, calm and relief. Grateful for everyone's gifts to me. Beautiful. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Monika, for this space.
Oh, that was really great. I thank you so much. It was, I agree with Paul that I'm gonna sit with these questions also. I think they're really powerful, and yeah, thank you.